Good morning, friends and enemies. Today's video is going through every single wide receiver for fantasy football. I'm going to let you know whether you should sit them, whether you should start them, and how I personally feel about each of those players on that spectrum of the sit and start. As always, you can grab my weekly rankings, which are not available anywhere else except for BDGE.co if you're a Big Dog member. All right, let's jump into the games. Thursday Night Football, Philly at New York. Philadelphia on the road at MetLife Stadium. They are 7-point favorites, 40.5-point total here. If you need help with your running back sit start questions, I did this exact same video for running backs yesterday, so we will link that down below. Starting off with some injuries here, nothing overly concerning. Darius Slayton, of course, is going to miss this one. Landon Dickerson on the line for the Eagles are going to miss this one. Now, with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, I mean, listen, a lot of people in the industry are just going to flip-flop back and forth. Devontae Smith had the big game last week, so they're going to feel better about it. Ultimately, I'm going to throw A.J. Brown to the feels-good category. They're playing against the Giants. I think he'll get home just by default because of the matchup. The Giants currently allowing the third most fantasy points to the wide receiver position. If you look at the lines here, 64.5, 4.5 receptions as his Vegas total. Devontae Smith, coming off the big game, I think he's a dub flex. I would feel good about having him in my flex spot for this upcoming week, but I will have A.J. Brown ranked above Devontae Smith for this game. Brown's been getting the targets. Hard to say what their game plan is going to be going into this game because they've kind of drastically swung back and forth over the last couple weeks. They go really pass heavy last week, and I do wonder if that's a product of the offensive line now being banged up. But I also have to imagine, Saquon versus the Giants, they probably run primarily through him despite not having a ton of success on the ground. Either way, A.J. Brown feels good. Devontae Smith, dub flex, would feel fine about having either of them in my lineup for this matchup. On the flip side, I mean, you can't really trust anybody in the passing game right now. Darius Slayton's out. Wan'Dale Robinson should see a high floor, but the Eagles' pass defense is obviously really good. They haven't allowed a ton of production to slot-only receivers. There have been guys who run routes in the slot this year that have gotten home against them, like Courtland Sutton, not a slot guy at all, had a big game last week. Look at like CeeDee Lamb had a good game in week one. Emeka Egbuka had a good game, and then the Rams, like Puka Nacua. I would say like all those guys run routes in the slot, obviously, and they'll get Cooper DeJean on them. But ultimately, those guys are just like well-rounded receivers that run routes all over the place. They're not the Wan'Dale Robinson type. So listen, Wan'Dale should see decent volume because he's kind of the only guy there running routes. And because he plays in the slot, he won't see a ton of like Quinyon Mitchell. Overall, I think he'll probably be in the dub flex category for me because his target share should be so high, but he's definitely going to be towards the bottom of that tier. Moving to the other New York team, we've got Denver and the Jets, 9:30 a.m. Eastern time. This one's in Tottenham, and we have a 7.5-point spread in favor of the Broncos, of course, 43.5-point total here. Nothing in terms of the injury report to watch out for. Courtland Sutton at this point and Garrett Wilson. Honestly, they both have pretty tough matchups. Like Sutton's obviously gotten home against everyone and everyone's kind of down on Sauce Gardner. I would say Sauce Gardner, who heavily shadowed George Pickens last week, actually played really well. And George Pickens just kind of beat him by a step and made a great catch on that like 40-yard touchdown that he had. Otherwise was shut down for the majority of the day. Either way, there's just no chance that Sutton and Garrett Wilson aren't getting into your lineup. They just are the passing offense for their respective teams, regardless of the fact that both of them, I think, have tough matchups because Sutton's just an outside guy and he's going to get Sauce Gardner the entire time. I'd imagine, again, that they end up using Sauce the same way against Sutton that they did against Pickens. Garrett Wilson, really tough matchup, of course, but just a garbage time king at this point. On the flip side, like you do want to get players against the Jets. You just can't really trust anybody in the passing game for them. Franklin would be the next guy up for me for sure. His line is definitely the highest. He's running the most routes. And this is a Jets defense that, as you could see, third most EPA per pass allowed to opponents and just the second most points per game allowed to opponents on the season right now. There's no one else that I really want to get into my lineup. Marvin Mims going to be a rather not. So we'll move on to the next game. We've got Arizona at Indy. Kicks off the 1 p.m. slates. Indy, 7-point favorites here, 46.5-point total. I do want to say before we move on, I didn't upload the weather reports to this week's rankings yet, but we can take a look at them together in real time right now. This is available free, so if you ever want to just check out the weather reports, I just automate it for you guys and obviously have them included in the rankings. rotogrinders.com/weather/NFL. Kevin Roth updates this pretty much in real time as the week goes by. You could see the games with weather concerns slightly here. Anything with a green is basically like there might be a touch of weather in a negative degree, but green is like it's not enough to ever really impact any sort of fantasy game. But the only one here that does seem to be of a little bit concern is this Rams at Baltimore here. The most interesting game because it has both the highest wins on the week and the best chance for rain. If we trust models this far out on specifics, again, it's Thursday, so things could change by Sunday, of course. I don't, but we can pretend we'll be dealing with a steady and eventually soaking light to moderate rain. Winds are around 15 miles per hour with gusts over 25 miles per hour, occasionally pushing to 30. The wind and rain combo is a bump down to the passing attack. The rest of them are just very, very slight winds. Cleveland at Pittsburgh, 10 mile per hour winds with a slim chance of a shower. So the Rams-Baltimore game is really the only one to keep an eye on. We'll touch on that as we get into that game. So at this point, Pittman's just got it done every single game. He's clearly like the top passing option in the receiver room for the Colts. I mean, if he's on your team, I just don't see a world where he's not in your lineup right now. If we look at the injury reports, Will Johnson did get back to playing last week, so it does look like he's going to play again in this one, which is obviously a big boost to the Cardinals secondary. On the flip side, the Colts top cornerback, Kenny Moore, looks like he will be out again, which is a big downgrade to the other side of things for a guy like Marvin Harrison. So Harrison coming off of a relatively big game, him and Kyler clicking a little bit more. Again, I still don't trust that team whatsoever and that passing offense whatsoever. But with Kenny Moore out and the implied total of 46.5, I feel pretty good about Marvin Harrison Jr. So I'm going to get him into my lineups this week. Josh Downs, yeah, I just don't see how you can really trust him as anything more than a shaky flex. And there's nobody else in this game that I want in my lineup. Next game up, we've got Cleveland at Pittsburgh, a 37.5 point total, similar to when the Browns played Minnesota last week in England. I think the total was like 35.5, or I'm actually confusing all these teams now because they've all been playing internationally the last couple of weeks. But yeah, it's just not expected to see a lot of points here. So we got DK as the alpha here against Cleveland. Now, Cleveland's run defense is awesome, obviously. Their pass defense, they've been thrown on. As you can see, there's plenty of green across the board here. Top half in terms of fantasy points allowed to wide receivers, EPA per rush, just points per game overall to my opponents. Now, DK, he's had his games. He's coming off of his best game of his career. They're coming off of the bye week, obviously, right now. They are 5.5 point favorites here against the Browns. It does look like there's a chance Calvin Austin misses this game. Coming off of the bye, if we look at the injury report, he was a DNP on Wednesday. So he needs to get back to practice either Thursday or Friday for him to suit up. If he does not, it's obviously like a minor boost to guys like DK and anyone else in the passing game here. Let's take a look at the rest of the injury report. So big boost for the Steelers secondary here, likely getting Joey Porter Jr. back, likely getting Alex Highsmith back as well. Jalen Ramsey was a DNP with the hamstring coming off of the bye, so that could be a little, swap out there, Joey Porter for Jalen Ramsey there. But Joey Porter getting back is a big deal for them, as is Alex Highsmith. So ultimately, I think DK has kind of just been the same guy he's been all year. Like he's kind of getting it home. He's kind of getting home. It doesn't feel like as you're watching the game, he's making that big of an impact. And then he makes a big play, screenplay goes yard or whatever. And when Rodgers is down in the red zone, he does like to give DK Metcalf those chances. I'm not like over the moon about him in this matchup. I think it's just going to be a slow pace, not a lot of plays type of game. I think he deserves to be in the dub flex. Like I'm definitely playing him over Wan'Dale Robinson. I think Devontae and DK Metcalf are kind of like the splitting hairs here, and that's where you have to make that sit-start decision. Again, you can get all of my rankings about where I would actually make these choices between the two. I think ultimately he belongs here. Like I don't feel great about him just because that's the type of offense that the Steelers run. They're not pass heavy, but I feel good about him in my flex. The rest of this game, though, like Judy's been pretty terrible. Again, getting Joey Porter back, his receiving yardage line is at 35.5. That's only 7 yards higher than Isaiah Bond, which is kind of crazy. The fall off for Judy's been pretty wild. It didn't seem like he had a great connection with Dylan Gabriel, but those things ebb and flow. I don't know how much passing volume we're going to expect from this Cleveland Browns offense with Judkins getting 25 touches a game, just overly slow pace. At this point, he's definitely going into the shaky flex category for me. He'll probably be at the top of it, but definitely does not need to be in your lineup. Isaiah Bond's also going to get into the shaky flex category. Would definitely prefer Judy at this point, but at the same time, he's seeing the targets and he's seeing some downfield targets from Gabriel. They obviously need to work on their chemistry a little bit to get that catchable target rate up a bit, but I still think he's playable. Next up, we got Dallas at Carolina. Check out the injury report. CeeDee Lamb still did not return to practice yet. However, we do have Jalen Coker getting back to a full practice. His practice window opened. It's not a guarantee that he returns, but it is trending in the right direction here. Kevontae Turpin with a DNP. That's, I guess, a little bit of a bump for the other receivers here, the Ryan Flournoys of the world, etc. Chuba Hubbard starts the week off with a DNP, so it looks like we ride Rico Dowdle to the promised land again. Yeah, George Pickens, I just don't see a world where you could ever sit him. Of course, is a good matchup. His line's all the way up at 72.5, 5.5 receptions. He's probably going to get the same treatment pretty much that he got last week with Sauce Gardner, but this time around, J.C. Horn. So I don't think JC's really been traveling a ton with receivers and shadowing opposing receivers. So I think there's a chance that he'll have a handful of routes that don't come against him and will probably be able to get home in this one. This is a 49.5 point total just because both defenses are pretty atrocious right now. The Cowboys are 3-point favorites. But yeah, for Pickens, it doesn't really matter. Like, he's been shadowed. He's been schemed against. He's just getting home every single week. And I feel great about having him in my lineup. Tet, I feel really, really good as well. He's going to get into the second tier and probably at the very, very top of it. As you can see, it doesn't get much worse than the Dallas Cowboys defense. I honestly thought with Trayvon Diggs and Deron Bland both returning last week, they were going to be a little bit better in the secondary. Didn't really turn out to be that. I do think as they get a little bit healthier, the Dallas secondary will get better. They just don't have a pass rush right now. So Tet, his lines are extremely high. Has not scored a touchdown yet, but I mean, like, this matchup is so good for him. Dallas allowing the #1 most fantasy points per game to the wide receiver position. #1 in terms of EPA per pass allowed. Like, you just got to love the lineup. Ryan Flournoy is the interesting name here, coming off of a huge game last week. And again, if we do see, I think on the spectrum of outcomes, J.C. Horn shadowing George Pickens could open up downfield shots again for Ryan Flournoy. So I'm not dying to get him in my lineup by any means, but I absolutely think he deserves to be in the shaky flex category. When you look at the lines across the board, Judy's at 35.5, 3.5 receptions. Flournoy's 2 yards behind him at 33.5 here, higher than Isaiah Bond, underneath Josh Downs and Troy Franklin, but definitely in this shaky flex tier where if you want to take the chance and roll the dice on Pickens getting shadowed by J.C. Horn, leaving, Jake Ferguson and Flournoy to really like open up the offense for the Cowboys, it seems like Dak has some trust in Flournoy. We'll see what happens there. Behind Tet, I mean, Xavier Legette had a pretty good game in his first game back. He's definitely just going to get tossed into the shaky flex category. I'd probably just rather not play him, but you never know. Jalen Coker, same thing. I don't even know if he's going to play. If he does play, I want him on my bench. I want him stashed because I do think he's a talented wide receiver, but there's just no way that you can trot him out into your lineup after like a 6-week hiatus from a hamstring strain. Next up, we got the Chargers at Miami, 44.5 point total here. The Dolphins are 4.5 point underdogs. This one, you know what? It feels a little bit simple to me. I just think Jalen Waddle without Tyreek Hill is pretty much going to be a must start every single time, regardless, just because their offense and their passing offense is just going to run right through him, regardless of the defensive matchup, to be honest with you. So Waddle goes into the must start. I'm also just not going to flip flop every single week on these Chargers wide receivers in terms of who I want to start, just because Ladd had the good game last week, or at least, it wasn't even that good. He just scored a touchdown. Doesn't mean I like him more than Quentin Johnson now. I will say there's a little bit of merit to the fact that this offensive line is banged up, and now that Herbert has to get the ball out a little bit quicker, maybe it favors guys like Keenan or Ladd McConkey a little bit more. But you're playing the Dolphins secondary right now, who are horrendous, of course. And I do think they'll dial up some deep shots to Quentin Johnson. So Johnson's going to go into feels good. Ladd and Keenan Allen are both, high-end dub flexes for me for sure. And we'll leave it at that. Malik Washington, ridiculously disappointing game last week. Honestly, if you started him or whatever, that's kind of on you to expect him to have a big game. He's a line of scrimmage, like fake flanker gadget player in the slot that I think he'll have some games where he goes 4 for 50, but ultimately, he just belongs in the shaky flex category where you have a lot of options that are going to be better. Moving on to the Rams at Baltimore. Now, you heard the weather report. Holy shit. Puka was up at 104.5 and 8.5 receptions. Those lines are insane. Like I said, I would just keep an eye on the weather reports for this game. I think regardless of what the weather is, Puka's a must start this week. I think Devontae Adams against the Ravens secondary is a must start as well. The one player that this would affect, obviously, that you're deciding between would be Zay Flowers, right? We had Cooper Rush come out last week. The Ravens offense only ran 40 plays. You're not going to be able to do much with it. Zay Flowers kind of still got home regardless, so had a good PPR day. The question is, what does this offense look like? It is obviously trending again, Lamar Jackson is going to miss week 6. They have their bye, and then he should return post their bye. So better days ahead, of course. But it's can Cooper Rush maintain a usable offense? Again, I go back to last year when he filled in for Dallas. That first game that he played was really bad, and everyone's like, oh, this is like Jake Browning right now. That's the kind of the energy that everybody had towards Cooper Rush. And then he was fine for like the next 7 games. So I do think Cooper Rush is a capable backup. If he gets to run more plays, if he gets into a little bit of a rhythm, I could see him being better. That being said, they're playing against the Rams, which is obviously a really tough matchup. If we look at the practice report, Kyle Hamilton did return to a limited practice, which is big for them. Ronnie Stanley, limited practice, but Chidobe Awuzie, DNP, Marlon Humphrey, DNP, Roquan Smith, DNP. So those 3 players, if they don't get a limited practice in soon, the Ravens are looking like they're still going to be without a very, very large portion of their highest paid players. So Zay Flowers, to me, he's on that borderline between dub flex and shaky flex. I'm going to throw him into the dub flex category because we did see some good chemistry between him and Cooper Rush. But again, like I would keep a very, very close eye, of course, on that weather report. If it gets worse, then there's a really good chance we're kind of throwing Zay Flowers down, or maybe we're just hitting the under on that receiving yardage line, which I think I like from the rip. I think that's probably going to be one of the plays I put on the big day parlay. If you're not following me on Twitter or Instagram, make sure you do that at Nick Ercolano. That's where I'll post that. You could also follow every play, every bet, every slip that I make on the Pickett app, which is absolutely free to download. If you download it through the link below and use code BDGE when you get on there, again, free, no credit card or anything like that required, that will automatically have you follow myself and Guts account. So if you want to tail any of the picks that I make throughout the weekend or just see what I'm doing and then kind of branch off and make your own picks based on that, go do so through the Pickett app. You could sync all the plays that you make across every single sportsbook. You could follow your friends. You could follow me. It's like a social betting app, which is really cool. So go download the Pickett app. Use code BDGE when you get on there. Moving to New England at New Orleans here. We've got a 45.5 point total in New Orleans. The Patriots are 3.5 point favorites here. Let's take a look at the practice report. Nothing too crazy that we need to worry about on the passing side of things. Now, we did see Christian Gonzalez, get back. He's getting back to speed. He's getting back to form. I think he's awesome when he's at full strength, and I do think we'll pretty much see that right now. So Vegas has his numbers really high right now. Olave 65.5, 6.5 receptions. I'm gonna be honest, I don't know if he's even touched 65.5 this year. I got to update this software to include past game logs. I'm sure he's hit it like at least one game, but that feels like a suspiciously high number right now. I do like the matchup for Olave. I think he's a fine PPR play, but this is one that I'll kind of push back, I think, on Vegas a little bit, where like his lines and his props really kind of push him towards the feels good category when you look at them, but he's more of a dub flex for me. Like, I don't think he's like a rock solid top 15 wide receiver 2 right now. Stephon Diggs has shown out the last couple of weeks. I mean, last week he exploded over 100 receiving yards, obviously, like really, really big game. Best game as a Pat, obviously. And, he's getting more and more into form coming off that ACL tear. It looks like Drake May's number 1 guy, clearly. This is a good matchup for him coming against the Saints defense. So I think Stephon Diggs will get into the dub flex category as well. And Rashid Shaheed, listen, I get it. He's coming off the big game, had a spike week thanks to the 80-ish yard touchdown last week, but every single game pretty much before that was 40 yards. And if he doesn't connect on that deep pass, I still think he's not a dub flex right now. I think some people might be desperate to get him into the lineup, but for me, he's still a shaky flex, probably at the top of the tier. Like, I do like him this week, and I think he's ranked highly amongst all the guys in the shaky flex in my rankings right now. But let's not act like if he doesn't get that long touchdown last week, we are not just looking at him as another shaky flex player this week. Everybody else in this game is pretty much a rather not. Butte, Cooks, everybody. We won't waste our time putting them down there. Seattle at Jacksonville. I got to say, man, watching that Monday night game, it does feel like something kind of clicked for Jacksonville there. Big win against the Kansas City Chiefs. And I think this is just one of those things where, like, when you come in to a fresh year with a brand new coach and a brand new system, sometimes these things take a while to click. Sometimes they take a few weeks. Sometimes they take a month or two. And I do feel like we're turning a little bit of a corner with the Jacksonville Jaguars, especially on the passing side of things. The other thing to note is Brenton Strange got put on the IR, and Brenton Strange is not like a high upside player at this point, but he's also a guy that commands 5-6 targets per game, and they're going to go elsewhere. Like, maybe they just go to the backup tight end, but I also think this does provide a little bit of a boost for the wide receivers in Jacksonville right now. Where I'll be keeping my eye on for this game entirely is the Seattle secondary. Now, we all know Seattle's defense is really good. Their run defense is awesome. Right now, though, they're getting torched in the secondary because they're playing without almost all of their starting secondary players. Devon Witherspoon missed last week, again a DNP to start the week. Not great. Julian Love, starting safety, a DNP to start the week. Reek Woolen suffered a concussion last week, so he was limited. We don't know. It's always a 50-50 with the concussions. 50% of the guys clear, 50% of the guys don't clear by the upcoming week. So there is a chance they're without Devon Witherspoon, Julian Love, and Reek Woolen in this game. Their other rookie safety second rounder is limited in practice to start the week, so it does look like he is trending to get back possibly. But overall, if those guys miss, I do think this is going to be a sneaky, really good matchup for a guy like Brian Thomas Jr. So I actually feel pretty damn good about him. I think him and Trevor have kind of like got over those early season woes. He's trusting him a little bit more. Brian Thomas Jr. is not dropping passes anymore. He's making bigger plays. He's looking a little bit, game by game, looking a little bit more like the Brian Thomas Jr. that we saw last week. JSN is obviously going to go into the must-start category. Cooper Kupp will continue to be a shaky flex for me. Travis Hunter, really exciting game last week. We still need to see him become more of like a full-time player on offense before he's someone that we trust in our lineups, and everybody else is guys that, if you're really desperate, you could throw a De'Ami Brown into your lineup. Torrey Horton, same thing. He keeps scoring touchdowns, scored 3 touchdowns in the last 4 games. Actually, there might be 4 touchdowns if you include his return touchdown as well. Again, just not really running enough routes. This is a Jacksonville team that has a good defense. So Horton, to me, I'd actually probably throw him into the shaky flex category, but you got to be damn desperate. Moving to Tennessee at Las Vegas. Let's check the practice reports. It looks like, again, Brock Bowers is going to miss this one. I think he's already actually been ruled out, which would give a boost to, again, I've been trying to tell y'all, Michael Mayer returning from the concussion. If you are desperate at tight end, man, I think Mayer can be a nice play for you. It's like the same sentiment I've been talking about. Like when Chuba Hubbard's out, Rico Dowdle becomes a better version of what Chuba Hubbard would be when he's there. Michael Mayer, I think, is a guy that can step in. He's like a real handcuffed tight end, in the same way that like if Mark Andrews is out, Isaiah Likely will be really, really good. Not to that level, most likely, because we don't trust his passing offense as much. But I do think Michael Mayer will fit in pretty nicely here for this week. And then nothing else crazy on the injury front in this game. Jakobi Meyers, back-to-back disappointing days. So listen, the matchup is great. They're playing Tennessee. 41.5 point total. The Raiders are 3.5 point favorites. Geno Smith is playing the worst ball of his career right now. Ultimately, I still think you go back to the well with Jakobi Meyers based on the matchup. He's going to be a dub flex for me. Trey Tucker, I like Trey Tucker again. The matchup is there, but I do think I'd still rather have Jakobi Meyers in my lineup than Trey Tucker, though he definitely deserves to be in the shaky flex tier and probably closer to the top of it. Calvin Ridley coming off of a big game, and this matchup is great. As you can see, the Raiders allow the 4th most fantasy points to the wide receiver position, 4th in EPA per pass allowed, 8th overall in just points per game allowed. That being said, Vegas is like, you're not fooling me here. His line's at 3.5, 42.5 receiving yards here. This is one of those games where it's like, do we look at what happened last week and then wipe out the first 4 weeks? I still think Calvin Ridley's a good receiver. He had some of the yips early on. He wasn't making plays. He was dropping balls. Ultimately, when I'm looking at the players across the board here, he resonates more in the shaky flex tier still for me than the dub flex tier. Like I'm looking at all these names and there's no way I'm benching a Keenan Allen or a Ladd or a Metcalf or an Olave for Calvin Ridley right now. So you know what? If he stacks back-to-back good games, then we can move him up into the dub flex tier. But for now, he'll go into the shaky flex tier and he will go towards the top of that tier. Alec Ayumaner, the rookie who had a really hot start. I'll throw him into the shaky flex tier as well, just because I still think he's running all of the routes. I know he's still running all the routes, but he just hasn't been producing like he was early on. And that, that's one of the problems with guys who score a lot of touchdowns early on. When they're not like overly involved, when they're getting 4 or 5 targets a game, but they keep connecting on touchdowns, those touchdown numbers are eventually going to evaporate, right? They're eventually going to become dehydrated and not be the high upside player that you thought you'd have. Jack Besh, I also think he is an interesting stash for you. You don't want to play him this week, of course, but if you're in a very deep league, if you're looking for a luxury ad, it's got to be deep, of course. But Deontay Thornton got benched last week in favor of Jack Besh, and he made some plays, and he was a talented receiver. He was a day 2 pick for them, got drafted ahead of Deontay Thornton, just didn't win the job throughout the summer. Besh was a guy that I really like, strong possession receiver, Jakobi Meyers type. So I do wonder if Besh starts to get more playing time going forward. We're going to throw him into the rather not tier, but I would say he's not the worst stash if you're in a deep league. Moving to Cincinnati at Green Bay. Cincinnati 14-point underdogs. Now, I talked a little bit about Joe Flacco getting added to the team, so you can get my thoughts in yesterday's video, more so when we talked about Chase Brown. Right now, Jamar Chase, he's not going to be a must start for me, of course, but I don't see really anybody that has the option of sitting him. I think it raises the floor a little bit of Jamar Chase. You can't raise the ceiling any higher. Like we saw what he just did with Jake Browning last week, popping off for 2 touchdowns and wide receiver 2 on the week, etc. Ultimately, it's good, right, for everybody on the Bengals because now you have a guy in Joe Flacco that can actually like operate an offense and just put the ball in the vicinity of the receivers. That's really what we need as Chase and Higgins owners, and the matchups will get better. Right? Like they've had a brutal 4-game stretch of the Broncos and the Packers and the Lions, like these really, really tough defensive matchups that eventually lighten up, and these will get better as we go forward. What I do think it does is elevates the floor of a guy like T. Higgins. So I like T. Higgins a lot more. He's definitely not going to get into the dub flex category for me, but like there are a lot of guys that sit in favor of T. Higgins now with Joe Flacco at the helm. Again, though, the matchup against Green Bay is obviously very, very tough. So I'm not like eager to get him into my lineup this week, but I promise you going forward in following weeks, Higgins will likely find himself closer to the dub flex tier than the shaky flex tier. Coming out of the bye, the receivers for Green Bay, we have Christian Watson returning to practice. I believe they opened up his practice window. So another guy who in deeper leagues is a stash. Ultimately, I think he just kind of makes that receiver room even more murky than it was entering this one. Now, Vegas has Matthew Golden's numbers higher than Dobbs and Dontavian Wicks. 44.5 receiving yards, 3.5 receptions. Dobbs at 39.5, 3.5 receptions. So ultimately, what I think those numbers point towards is like, it's just Golden has a much higher probability of hitting on a big play. The matchup is obviously great. They're playing against the Bengals. Putting him at a dub flex, though, would feel disingenuous because he's not really been getting home. Obviously, he's liable to break a big play any given week, but I think I kind of look at him in the same vein as like a Trey Tucker, where, I mean, obviously Vegas points towards them being the same. Golden has a better opportunity to score a touchdown, most likely, because they're playing the Bengals and they'll probably be living inside the red zone, though this could be a game where Josh Jacobs end up scoring 2 or 3 touchdowns. Romeo Dobbs, despite his numbers being bad, I would be starting Romeo Dobbs probably over all of these players, and I'm actually going to throw him into the dub flex tier. He's a guy for me that's like in that wide receiver 35 to 38 range. He's Love's favorite target. He runs every single route down there. This is a great matchup against Cincinnati. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Romeo Dobbs scored a touchdown again. Like, would anybody? So I like him there, and then I'm not starting anybody else in this game. Moving on to San Francisco at Tampa Bay. Now, the practice report is still a tough one to read here. It looks like Brock Purdy is likely going to be out for this game. It sounded like, based on Kyle Shanahan yesterday, Ricky Pearsall is also going to miss this game. Juwan Jennings started the week with the DNP as well. He hasn't practiced in weeks, so at this point, you just have to assume that was a high ankle sprain. I still am leaving the door open for Juwan Jennings to play this week. And if he does, I feel relatively good about him. Like he was DNP'd across the entire week. I think it was week 2. Ended up having a strong game. That being said, though, that was a shoulder injury compared to what sounds like a moderate high ankle sprain at this point. So I'm a little bit less optimistic that he has a big game in this one if he does play. Chris Godwin also started the week with a DNP, so that's something to keep an eye on as well. There's just a lot of players on the injury report for this one. We've got Zion McCollum and Benjamin Morrison, cornerbacks for the Buccaneers, both DNP'd up right now. So here's how I'll lay this out. Obviously, Emeka Egbuka is going into the must-start category. Godwin, if he plays, that line also feels really, really high. Do I feel good about him as a dub flex? No, I do not. So he's definitely going into the shaky flex category for me. Probably a stronger name amongst those. I would say Juwan Jennings also goes into that category for me if he plays. And then we've got Kendrick Bourne, the talk of the town here. Kendrick Bourne, look how many fucking names are on this list. Good God. Kendrick Bourne obviously popped off last week. And if Juwan Jennings doesn't play, assuming Ricky P and Juwan Jennings don't play, I mean, I would feel great about Kendrick Bourne, obviously. Kendrick Bourne probably goes into the feels good tier, but I'm going to throw him into the dub flex tier for right now. Probably, I think I'd play him over Zay Flowers. I don't know that I'd play him over Olave given the matchup, but I'd probably play him over Wandell. He's in this vicinity for sure if those other guys don't play. If Juwan plays, like I said, I'm a little bit pessimistic about Juwan, his effectiveness, just because of how much practice time he's missed now, and it is a lower leg injury and not a upper body injury. So I think there's a good chance that Bourne actually outproduces Juwan Jennings, even if Jennings plays. But I think they're both on the borderline of shaky flex, dub flex if Juwan Jennings does suit up. I like the matchup against Tampa Bay. It's a 47.5 point total here, and that team can be thrown on. So just an overall tricky situation to really, get a grasp on right now for fantasy. Next up, we got the Sunday night football game. We've got Detroit at Kansas City. Ultimately, I feel good about Xavier Worthy. He's just been super, super involved in this offense. Hasn't really had like the blow-up game yet, but this is the last week to really play him and get your nut off while Rashee Rice is not out. Rashee Rice returns after week 6. So huge for the people that have Rashee Rice. This game total is up at 52.5. And I will tell you, man, the Lions defense was kind of scary coming into the year. However, DJ Reed is out now. Terrion Arnold is out now. Kirby Joseph started the week off with a DNP. Ryan Branch limited right now. So the secondary took a huge hit. This could end up being, I won't say similar to the end of last year, because they were also without a bunch of like linebackers, Aiden Hutchinson, Aleem McNeil, like a lot of guys, some of which they have playing right now. So it won't be as depleted as it was down the stretch, but this could definitely turn into a huge pass funnel defense. And we saw at the end of last week, obviously there was just kind of like a blown coverage on Jamar Chase, etc. But when DJ Reed was out, Terrion Arnold was out, like the Bengals were able to get some success going through the air. And I think we could see the Lions pass defense struggle a little bit over the next month or so of the season. Amon-Ra St. Brown, of course, is going to go right into the must-start category. Jameson Williams is really the tricky one here. The Chiefs pass defense has actually been really good. As you can see, 29th in EPA per pass allowed right now. I mean, there's no way you can throw him into the dub flex category. Of course, he could always connect on a deep pass, but he's going to be somewhere in the shaky flex category for me. I will say Khalif Raymond, low-key, could open up some opportunities for Isaac Tesla or Jameson Williams, etc. But no one else I'm like overly excited about. I think all the other KC receivers, Tyquan Thornton, I wish he got like more run. I wish he was like a real full-time player for them because he's kind of exciting. He's going to be in the shaky flex category for me, as is Hollywood Brown. I think both of these guys are playable, but you're not like dying to get them into your lineups, of course. And then we've got back-to-back games on Monday night. We got Buffalo at Atlanta, a 49.5 point total here. Buffalo is only 4.5 point favorites in this one. We don't have any practice reports on this one. This is really going to come down to whether or not Darnell Mooney is playing. He suffered a little bit of a hamstring tweak prior to their bye. The Falcons are coming off of their bye, so we'll see if Mooney gets in a limited practice today. If he misses, I mean, Drake London's going to have to go into the must-start tier because whenever Drake London plays without Darnell Mooney, his target totals are absolutely bonkers. If Darnell Mooney plays, I mean, I don't know how you can have much trust in him. He's going to be a shaky flex for me. Falcons defense has been, surprisingly good this year, especially against the pass right now. Also have to see if AJ Terrell can get back here after the bye. He's dealing with a hamstring strain that caused him to miss a couple games. Keon Coleman for me is a shaky flex. Obviously, any given week can score a touchdown or have a big play, but I would much rather play a dude like Khalil Shakir, who has a really safe floor. This is PPR leagues, of course. If it's half PPR standard, then Shakir definitely moves down. And then the last game of the slate, we've got Chicago at Washington. Coming off of the bye, I mean, Rome's just going to go right into the must-start for me. He's just earned that this year. A little bit tricky because we have Terry McLaurin, who was expected to get back to playing this week. However, this was a report from Ian Rappaport about Terry McLaurin very recently, said, does not seem like they're going to have the services of one of their top receivers. So Terry did not practice on Wednesday. So we're going to proceed as if Terry McLaurin is out. If that's the case, I mean, the Chicago passing defense, a lot better than their run defense. They will be getting back, I believe, Kyler Gordon. So they don't do official practice reports on Wednesday, but they do have practices and the media can report on who they see, who they don't see. We have a report from Zach Pearson, one of the beat reporters for Chicago. Practice in the books for the Bears today, speaking about yesterday, Wednesday. No injury report until tomorrow, but I did not see Jaquan Brisker, Grady Jarrett, or Darnell Wright out there. Kyler Gordon, TJ Edwards, and Colson Loveland were out there. So Kyler Gordon is, their second best or their slot cornerback, which is a big piece for them to get back because they're already without Jalen Johnson and a lot of their secondary power. So he's a big return for them. TJ Edwards is another big return for them. And then Colson Loveland will be out there, which makes Cole Kmet not as sexy as a streaming option. That being said, though, if Terry's out, I just don't see a world where Debo's not a must start because he's just been so good and he's basically Pickens when CD's out. Debo's just the guy that gets such a high target share for them. On the flip side, I'm really interested to see post-bye what Ben Johnson does with his rookies. Right, you got Colson Loveland, number 10 overall pick. You got Luther Burden as a top 40 pick. I wonder if we see a changing of the guard between Luther Burden and Alameda Zaccheaus coming out of the bye. I'm not like overly optimistic about it. I really do think that the Bears and Ben Johnson trust Alameda Zaccheaus. But if we see like a slight uptick in Luther Burden, this is the time, I think, if Luther Burden, you're in a 12-team league and someone dropped Burden coming off of the bye, this, I think, is the time to go snag him. Because if we see, this is the week where Burden's snap counts jumps to like 60%, he's going to be a very, very targeted guy on the waiver wire. So definitely not starting him by any means, but I do think he's a stash for you. DJ Moore is the other one. This is a good matchup against the Washington secondary, which is a lot worse than they are against the run here. DJ Moore's lines are at 39.5 with 3.5 receptions. So I don't think he deserves to be in the dub flex here. I don't think he's played well enough for that to be the case. So I'm going to throw him into the shaky flex tier. He'll be, again, towards like the top of the list because of the talent, because of his route running percentage here. You got guys like DJ Moore running 90% of the routes. Then you got guys like Torrey Horton and Travis Hunter and those types of guys who are running 60% of the routes. So they're in the same tier. Probably shouldn't be, but like there is no tier between these guys. Maybe that just means I need to put the Torrey Hortons of the world into the motherfucking rather not tier. Regardless, that's the breakdown for it. I will say, I realize now we got to the end of it, and I threw Marvin Harrison Jr. into the feels good tier, while Kyler Murray did miss yesterday's practice with a foot injury. I don't know if he misses this game. I've seen differing reports. It's never good to start the week off with a DNP. I've seen a few of the doctors say they're optimistic that Kyler Murray does end up playing through the pain, though it will limit his mobility, etc. If Jacoby Brissett ends up starting for the Arizona Cardinals, I think I would drop Marvin Harrison Jr. down to the dub flex tier, though it's clear that like Kyler is like he doesn't unlock Marvin Harrison by any means. So it feels a little bit like the Jet situation for Garrett Wilson, where it's like Harrison's going to be their number one wide receiver out there. And I think like the fall off from Kyler to Jacoby Brissett is real-ish. It's like noticeable, but I don't think it's like a huge impact play. Like I think he provides the offense with enough of a floor that they're going to be able to sustain drives and still get the ball, again, in the vicinity. It's the key word of the week of the receivers. All right. So Marv would drop down to the dub flex tier, but I don't think it like makes him a non-playable player. All right. So there you have it. Those are every single fantasy relevant wide receiver for the great week of week 6 in the big 2025. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you hit the thumbs up button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're new. And if you missed the running back version of this video, go check it out. That was yesterday. That'll be up on the channel. If you want my rankings at any given point for the remainder of the year, go sign up for a Big Dog membership on bdge.co. If you want it for free for the next 3 months, all you got to do is hit up our partner, MGM, go to their app, go to their website. If you deposit $10 or more as a first-time player, using code BDGE when you do so, and you play any slip on there, again, you could follow any of my plays on the Pickett app. So this is like a tandem, beautiful partnership we got together. Go download MGM, deposit $10 or more with code BDGE. Go download Pickett, use code BDGE. That's free. You could see my plays, tail them, use it on MGM. They're going to hit you with a promo code to use on our site for the next 3 months. You get the Big Dog membership. All right. I love y'all. I will see you on Saturday for the private Q&A if you are a Big Dog member. Smoochies. Mwah.